Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jeff Ishee, and this week we're coming to you from the beautiful Shenandoah Valley in Mount Crawford, Virginia. We want to thank the Carpenter family for welcoming us to their farm. This is Baycar Farm in Mount Crawford, Virginia, and their specialty is Boer goats. We haven't talked about Boer goats in a long, long time. These are the subject matter experts, so we're going to be talking about Boer goats today. You know, my wife said when I was leaving the house, well, what about the girl goats?
Pretty good, Jeff.
First of all, tell me about yourselves and the farm. Brian, you've been on this farm for a long time.
Yeah, grew up right across the road. Actually, this is the farm my grandparents lived in when I was growing up. It was a dairy farm. We sold our cows back in 2001, and the hardest part of that for me, Jeff, was having responsibility for my children to grow up with, similar to what I did. So my wife and I started talking and looking at different avenues we could have because, you know, there's just something about farm kids when they grow up with responsibility, they turn out to be great adults. So we started looking around, and Boer goats is just something that we found and thought, well, let's give that a try. The kids really took an interest in it. We bought our first goats in 2007, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's a topic I want to talk more about. A lot of folks treat it as a business,
Yes.
and a lot of folks treat it as a hobby, and that's a good mix. And
Yes.
in this particular case, it's a great mix. Bailey, your hobby of showing Boer goats, you started, I believe you told me, in first grade.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that experience. Where were you? And just describe it to me when you were exhibiting a Boer goat for the very first time.
So of course, we got our goats in the summer, and we were practicing with them, you know, over the summer, leading them around, getting them pretty much as a pet to walk around the show ring. And I remember stepping up to go into the ring for the first time, kind of had that butterfly feeling in my stomach. And I remember walking through the ring kind of nervous, just kind of watching everybody else around me, trying to see, you know, how to set their legs up and everything. And of course, I'm also, you know, looking at Carly to make sure she's got hers set up right, and then kind of trying to find mom and dad off, you know, on the ring so they can give me the, you know, the thumbs up that I'm doing it right. And, you know, it went really well for me the first time. You know, I really enjoyed it and been stuck with it ever since.
One fact, when we were talking with your wife Stephanie just a few days ago, she brought up a fact that a lot of you at home might not know this, but she told us that goat meat is actually the most popular meat on the planet. More people around the world eat goat than eat beef, chicken, fish, or whatever.
You're exactly right, and that's kind of hard to really fathom here in this country. You know, we're more prevalent to beef and pork, and of course poultry industry, which we're all huge here in the United States. But when you start looking on a global scale, goat meat is the most popular meat eaten.
Brian, tell us about this organization you're a member of. I believe it's the Blue Ridge Boer Goat Breeders.
Yes, we're one of the founding members of that organization. We started it about 4 years ago. We got together with some other local breeders, just looking to educate the public on what the Boer goat industry has to offer. We put on one show every year at the Rockingham County Fairgrounds, and we also do a sale every year where new people can come and buy really good Boer goats. It's an auction type base, of course, but they can come to the sale and purchase what they're looking for from reputable breeders and get something where they can either add to their herd or start their herd, whichever they're looking to do, but they know they've got a good quality base animal to start that herd with.
Now, Bailey, you told me before the segment today that you treat this pretty much as a hobby, but it's also a business.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to keep
Oh,
a count of all the numbers, and tell me about that perspective of it as a business. What do you do?
Well, I mean, I get kind of attached to some of them, especially the ones I show at the county fair here. You know, I'm working with that animal all summer, but I mean, I got to know at the end in the back of my mind, you know, that's the whole goal of the project is, you know, to make money and treat it like a business. So you get that sort of aspect before going into the real world, maybe coming back to a farm.
Mm-hmm. Brian, the popularity of goats has risen dramatically here in the Commonwealth of Virginia over the past, I'd say, 2 decades. Tell me about that growth and the reason for it.
Well, the growth has just exploded. Number one, because you don't have to have a lot of acreage for a goat. So it's real popular among smaller farmettes, if you want to call it that. It's really popular with 4-H and FFA exhibitors because they can take this animal and put it in their backyard, basically in a dog kennel if they wanted to. And it gives those kids that may not have an opportunity otherwise to show animals. You know, when you start looking at both pork or the swine and cattle, it takes a lot of support to be able to have that animal and show at a fair, where, you know, if you've got goats, it's much smaller scale. It's a shorter term project. They can have it, you know, for less time. and the kids really get to have fun with it. Generally, they get their animals right about the time school's out, and before they go back to school, they've sold their animal to county fair and they're ready to move on. So it gives that child something to work with all summer, and I think that's one of the reasons why it has just exploded. And then as far as the breeding part of it, a lot of these kids have shown these animals at their county fair. They get attached to them, and then they realize, hey, this is something I want to do. So they start their own small herd. They're breeding their own animals so they can show their own goats at the fair, and it's just taken off. Wow.
Bailey, is a goat a lot easier to show than, say, a market hog?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I have mixed feelings on that, because I mean, I show pigs too, and I mean, pigs is where I started at. I was 9 when I started showing pigs, and I was 10 when I started showing goats, because of course we had the goats at that time, but we didn't have any goats that were born on our farm, and I wanted to show a goat for the first time in the market show that would be some of my own. So I've really got a real passion as far as showing market hogs too. That's something, I mean, as far as being easier, I mean,
depends on the hog.
That's right. I mean, hogs can have a mind of their own. You can have a hole, of course, that big, and it seems like they'll go through it every time. Whereas these, they don't really go through that hole as much. I mean, they sort of have a little bit more leniency to keep in. They're a little bit easier to keep in, I think.
Brian, as a family hobby, let's talk about that for a minute. You've
Sure.
had the opportunity to travel with your kids, your wife, and spend a lot of time making new friends. Talk about that as a family hobby.
Jeff, when we first got into this back in 2007, we had no clue where we were going with it. We learned a lot trial by error, so that was one thing. But the friendships we have made across the country, we've got friends now in New York where we've shown, we've got friends in Tennessee, we've got friends in Oklahoma, just different places that we have been to. And it's funny, the one common theme we find among all goat people, they all care about the animal, and they care about where the animal's going and the next goat farmer. So the shows are great. We have lots of fun with that, but the people have been the key, just meeting super people nationwide, and that's what keeps us in it.
That's well said, and we've only got a couple of minutes left in this segment. I want to dispel one myth right away, and I hope Bailey can help me do that. Tell me a little bit about the diet of a goat. Do they really eat tin cans?
No, they don't. They won't eat tin cans, but they'll definitely eat the labels off of them. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Really? Well, how important is the diet? Do you treat these show animals like you would a prize steer or a prize lamb?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what you're shooting for in your herd. Like if you have a show herd and then you can have a commercial herd, there's different types of feeds. You can feed your commercial herd just a straight, 16%, roughly pellet, and then you can feed more your show herd like an 18% protein pellet, to really pack on more muscle for the show and pack on a little bit more conditioning.
Brian, if people at home, they've got 10 acres that they have to mow every weekend, and they've got good fence, so they're halfway there to getting in on this. I don't want to call it a fad, but this trend that we're seeing with these very valuable animals that they can have. What would you recommend? Where do they start getting more information?
The Extension office is always a good place for them to start. They can go there, and the Extension office has a great list of breeders on file. We're included on that list. But if they start with them, they can direct them in the right direction to go to talk to a local breeder so they can get information. We're always more than happy to help out the new goat farm coming up. That was one of the reasons we got involved with the goats at the Rockingham County Fair, was to help the youngsters out, and then as they have gotten older, to also educate them about goat herds and just be there for information for them. If we can do anything as far as helping the next goat farmer not make the same mistakes that we made because we learned by error, that's what we're here for. We're glad to help them.
Now, of course, county fair season is upon us. June, July, August, September. Bailey, what would you say to youngsters, teenagers, and even preteens who, they've been thinking about maybe growing a pumpkin or maybe showing an animal? What would you tell them about showing goats at a county fair?
Well, as far as when you're picking them out, me and Dad can kind of agree with this. You want like a 4x4 block with, and then picture 4 legs coming out of it. Just, a real wide animal, wide through its front end, wide on top. Because, it's a market project. You want to be able to get the most meat on that animal you can get.
Now, you told me again before the program today that you've learned a lot about the science and the biology of the animals. Has that helped you?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of helped me. I know that if I go to a farm, or if I went to a farm to pick out a market project, I know that a doe is not as prone to getting urinary calculi as what a wether might be, because a doe's urinary tract is more pretty much just straight in a straight line, and that male's urinary tract is like a roller coaster. It's got loops and things in it where urinary calculi is like kidney stones, and those stones can get caught in that loop.
All right, one final question for you, Bailey, and that's when you walk into the show ring, what is the judge looking for? You described it as a cement block on 4 legs. What is the judge really looking for?
Well, he wants to make sure that animal's free moving. Pretty much when that animal walks, when he takes a step forward, you want his back leg to go right in the same hole as his front leg, and then you want to make sure he's strong across his top line. It's not like a U. You want him to be pretty straight across the top line. You want to be able to see his muscles, in his legs when he's moving. And then you also want to make sure he's wide, across his top and his front end. And just that he's a pretty structurally sound animal. I mean, you don't want his back legs to be like straight as a post. You want him to have sort of that bend. You want to see that at the hock.
And Brian, one final question for you. I noticed that you have guardian animals out here protecting these animals from potential predators. Share with me just a little bit about the animals that you selected as the guardians and why you picked those.
We actually have a llama and a Great Pyrenees both. The llama we just simply bought that at first just for the ease on us. The llama can eat the same feed that the goats do, and it's been wonderful. We've had a number of llamas over the years. We most recently went to Pyrenees dogs just because we saw how they had the natural instinct to herd animals and protect them. We've been using those now for about, I guess, 3.5 months, so we're still early on in the stage with those, but from what we've seen so far, they've just been wonderful. They do a great job of working as a team unit and guarding the animals and taking care of them. I don't know that we have a whole lot of problem around here with coyote or fox, either one. I know in different parts around this pretty locally we do have some issues, but I've never seen anything here. But I tell you, it's a whole lot easier to lay your head down at night knowing they're on guard watching for me.
You took the words right out of my mouth. You probably sleep better at night because these are high-value livestock.
Yes.
Very high-value livestock. Brian, real pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for everything that you do. Good luck in everything that you do in the future. Bay Car Farm in Mount Crawford, Virginia.